Hi, Peter Allen, Figure Transformations, and when I talk about a little bit what I've been discussing recently about kind of the hips, the glutes, the hamstrings in particular. So I've been trying to strengthen this right hip for years through exercise alone, and I realized what happened is the hip got kind of basically too tight. The glute became too tight, which started to force me to use my inside hamstring so much, my adductors so much. I mean, you can see how much bigger this whole inside of my leg is. And I can't even get that calf down if I wanted to when I'm in this position. This one I can kind of easily put down. So I've been lengthening the gastroc and the hamstring on the side as well as the hip. Finally, my hips are sitting much, much better. I still have some work to do on this, but I realized my left was pushing me into my right for years. And then as it pushed me, it was kind of forcing me to take an awkward angle, which tightened up the hamstring, the gastroc. I mean, you can see the difference in the calves. Oh, when I'm doing this, my right feels extremely tight. Even to try and lock that knee right on this inside. Now, for years I was thinking, okay, well, I gotta strengthen the outside. But how do you strengthen the outside when your knee is basically at an awkward angle? So whatever the hip throws at the knee's got to follow, and then so does the foot. So I kept spraining this ankle over and over and over. And you can even see right here, that soleus got so overworked. For years I was thinking, okay, well, it's kind of good. It's helping. It's making up for something, right? But really what it was doing is kind of pulling harder and harder on the inside, forcing my sartorius to start working harder. I mean, you kind of name it. If this hip is in too much, the quadriceps now have to fire kind of overtime. Same thing with the inside of the hamstring. And this is happening to a lot of us, even on my left side. Very similar. You can see that I've started to fix basically my outside quadriceps. I mean, these things you couldn't even notice. Now you can see that the kind of bubbling out a little bit here because I'm trying to lengthen basically my IT band, vastus lateralis. My left is much better in terms of stabilization now. Ankle's still collapsing a little bit more than I would like because, again, I still have to lengthen the gastroc, the hamstring. Think about it, over time, everything's just kind of pulling and shortening. And I wasn't doing nearly enough stretching like I should have. And by the time it gets to where I was, stretching alone is only going to get me so far. And that's, fine, I guess, for some people. But if you really want to, start making some differences with the hypervolt, I've been able to really re-lengthen all my tissue, kind of start fixing the hip, kind of both hips as well. Because again, one's doing one thing and one's doing the other. I should have been focusing on more of kind of rotating or swinging exercises possibly with my left. Martial arts were obviously in kind of this offset stance a lot, and I was on the ball of my foot, and I'm kind of, again, getting stuck here. I kept shortening it. So I started trying to get here, but my problem is my hips are kind of pulling me in. And again, that's because the glute is so tight. So I worked on, stretching. Actually, it was really great the other day. I did some kind of rotational movement patterns coming across and spinning. Open up that hip. Did another exercise where I'm coming across. I'll probably redo that one today as well for a workout for the hip, because I think that's the importance of the glute is not only just to push. All too often we're just focusing on the drive, myself included, and then a lot of motion patterns we're unfortunately taking are just kind of really tightening that glute more and more and more. And we keep thinking we just need to strengthen it, but if you, again, start looking at the body in terms of angles, you can start to understand when the muscles become too tight, because my knee's getting pulled in, I can't fire this properly. So, I got a cable that runs literally all the way down from my kind of glute, down from my hamstring to the back of my knee, all the way down on the calf. And now there's no muscle that technically runs that whole distance, but I can follow the particular cable all the way down, right to the inside, and literally right down to the calf, coming out here. And again, these cables, I realize that a lot of them are fascia lines, where they're going from bone to bone, or they're bypassing and traveling through the muscles altogether. Thankfully, I've again been able to do this with the hypervolt. Some of the hate to say it, but some of the kind of other guns, not all guns are created equal. And, you know, by putting this at higher vibration, I'm able to elicit huge responses in this hip. And I want to keep, again, kind of working this gastroc. But the big thing is making sure I get my hip. Okay, because again, it starts really way up here. So every time I injured my back, I realize, and I can kind of trace these kind of adhesions back, coming right off kind of my tailbone area. Again, my whole glute med's kind of shut off. It should be kind of a nice glute coming down, but again, over years, it just, you got to think about it. The glute med pulls up, so it starts to kind of pull the femur up, I guess, is the best way to explain it. Kind of some of the only ways to stretch this, you know, if we're younger and we start this, I think we have, you know, it doesn't take much time at all. You know, even if, again, you start exercising in your 20s and you really start using good mechanics, kind of anything's possible. I still think we need to keep making sure that we're stretching enough, or, again, kind of using percussion therapy with the stretching, I think is honestly the best, and kind of the only thing I found to be able to elicit these responses that I've been unable to obtain for years. Same thing with the adductors. You know, if you think about it, the glute starts to get tight, can't pull out. Now the adductors are working overtime. Nobody ever really complains about adductor pain, so I don't think we really see it or address it as an issue. But unfortunately, again, kind of, you got all this meat hanging here, and it's because the tissue just kind of keeps building and building and building. That's what we got to understand, is if we're moving in certain ways, the tissue is still viable. It's not turning into a hard fibrous tissue as often. But if we're sitting in one position for too long, maybe hip popping like I used to, this tissue becomes really hard, and these little movements are what kind of make up everything. Because again, when we exercise, we only get about an hour a day, if we're lucky, and we got to understand that these movements that we're taking or putting ourselves in are kind of eliciting these bad mechanics, if you will. So what I need to do, and this is usually more helpful too, kind of more short so that you guys can see, and again, I can document kind of what's happening to my calf as I stretch this out. And now I can see why my foot got messed up in my ankle, because again, the tissues here is just so tight, it forces us in to our movement patterns, whether we want to or not. We can try as much as we want. I can force myself to balance, and I can get better balancing here, but because my hip is so tight, I have such a harder time. And now again, I can force this, and I can stretch this like I have been, and then if I add in percussion therapy, my balance has improved so much, but it still takes time. That's what we got to understand, is these muscles are just becoming so tight, and that's also what leads to lack of definition in our muscles. All too often, again, we're thinking we got to strengthen. You know, I forgot I had definition in my quadriceps when I would sit. They would come back when I would cycle. But we should all kind of be able to see more definition on our muscles, if we, so to speak, if our muscles are at their natural length. And it's kind of sometimes hard to understand that all these muscles are not at their natural length, and we can't do it just with exercise alone. But through a variety of methods, we can kind of really start to achieve this. And hopefully this was helpful. It's just really kind of discussing my issues. I, for years, just thought it was just my hamstring being tight on this side, like so many others. I tried to strengthen the glute, and it started pushing me further and further. It forced my quadricep to start working harder, my adductors to start working harder, forced my other side to start working harder in different ways. And while it was okay, if I had let it be probably up into my 50s, 60s, I might need kind of maybe knee surgery, foot surgery, something, because the tissue was just getting tighter and tighter, you know, as the years progressed. Follow some of the other videos in terms of, again, kind of opening the hip. I'm going to actually kind of make another video with that hip exercise, and hopefully you found this helpful. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.